Welcome to Forbidden Planet 42, celebrating 42 years of the Forbidden Planet store in London, where for 42 years we've been endeavoring to answer the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. My special guest for this evening's session is none other than We Are Not Worthy, Alice Cooper, the living legend himself. Thanks so much for being with us this evening, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You know, Forbidden Planet is fairly legendary itself. You know, I mean, it's been there forever. And, you know, I mean, we all grew up on comic books. We all grew up on action heroes. We all grew up on, you know, on sci-fi. And just the fact that you guys are still there, that just shows how important that is to people. You know, that you not letting go of that piece of your teenage or your 20-year-old life. That you want to stay there a little bit, you know.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's absolutely how we all feel. Can you remember when you first became aware of the store? When it came to your consciousness?
Well, the first time that we ever, you know, went to England, the very first thing that, you know, we were just being from Phoenix, Arizona. The Beatles were so important to us. All the British bands were so important that when you got to England, you had to do your very best shows. You know, I mean, that to us was our target audience. You know, I mean, was like, you know, they've seen everybody. Now they're going to see us. So how do we stack up with these bands? And so, you know, we really, everything was 100%. I never did so many interviews in my life. I never did so many, you know, people were interested in the Alice Cooper thing because it kind of fed into what you're doing there. We were very theatrical, and the Alice Cooper character was a villain. I mean, he was a sci-fi villain, you know, and I think people kind of really liked the idea that there was a personification of rock and roll villainy. And they also loved the Hollywood publicity stunt. Yeah. You know, when we stalled the giant picture of Alice in Piccadilly Square on a Friday, and it stopped traffic all over London. We thought, well, we'll be in jail for a week or so, and then they loved it. They loved the fact that here was this half-naked picture of Alice with a boa constrictor that stopped traffic because it was a Hollywood publicity stunt, and London loved that. They thought that was really a cool thing to do, you know. So, I mean, right then I said, well, now I'm really connected, you know, to London. And it's a second home for me. I spend more time in London than I do in New York. And Forbidden Planet is one of those things where it's, you know, it's a mainstay. It's like the Hard Rock. It's like, you know, you go to all these certain places, and Forbidden Planet's one of those places that's a mainstay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I mean, we appreciate that, and it's great hearing you say it, and that's what we do find. You know, Forbidden Planet's famous. It's a tourist destination in and of itself, which I think is a beautiful thing. When you did and I'd like to talk about this book a little bit later, actually. When you did your signing with Neil Gaiman for The Last Temptation, how did you find that?
Well, you know, first of all, we felt very comfortable doing it because, you know, I knew I fit right in, you know, to Forbidden Planet. And there was this curiosity about Alice, even at that point. That was 1991. We had already, but they, you know, they tried to ban us there in 72, you know, Leo Absey and, you know, and that whole thing, which got an enormous amount of publicity, which was great.
Right on.
And I think after people saw the 76 show, Welcome to My Nightmare, basically goth was born then.
Absolutely.
You know, because the next time I went back there, all the kids were wearing top hats and they had black under their eyes, and they were wearing, you know, because it was very fashionable then. The Alice Cooper sort of goth look was in, and so I've always kind of felt that to make an impression, and where else would you do a signing for The Last Temptation, which was going to be not just an album, but it was going to be a stage show. And it was also going to be a comic book that Neil Gaiman and I wrote together. Neil and I, you know, I just saw him on the last tour.
Oh, fantastic.
He came in on the last tour. I saw him down in New Zealand.
Yeah.
and actually, kind of like fiddling around with something else right now that we're doing.
Oh, great. Oh,
Could be
fantastic.
something else. Yeah, could be something else coming up,
Yeah.
which would be cool. But, Neil's so great because I would be calling him. He lived in Wisconsin then. And I could only call him between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. And I said, so are you a vampire? Or nobody ever sees you during the day? And he says, no, I do all my writing at night, and that's when I'm up and going. He is such a great character. He is such a really lives, and is such a creative brain, that having him on that project was great. And then, of course, in the underground world of comic books, Neil Gaiman is Spielberg. I mean, he's as big as anybody ever in that world. So us two together at the Forbidden Planet was a pretty phenomenal night,
Oh yeah, that's a legendary signing for us, and it's one of the things that when people get into their memories about the history of the store, that is one of the legendary, top 1 or 2 signings that people ever remember. It was such a great moment.
Yeah. And since then, Comic-Cons have been born since then. That might have been sort of the first Comic-Con, only because people came there to see the 2 authors of this kind of movement or whatever it was. And then after that, I've done hundreds of Comic-Cons now, and some with Neil, some with all the great characters that you feature there. And I think it might have been sort of a beginning of that, of people seeing how many people were really connected to Forbidden Planet and connected to the sci-fi horror world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Something I wanted to ask you about, I've always wanted to ask you this question. So your real given middle name is Damon, which I read once that you named after Damon Runyon.
Yes.
Yeah? And are you a Runyon fan? Were you?
Well, my dad was a big Damon Runyon fan.
Yeah.
And the Thin Man and that whole era, and I was very affected by that myself. The movies I used to watch, in fact, Cheryl and I used to check in as Nick and Nora Charles.
Oh, fantastic!
Brilliant. And only very few people would go, oh,
yeah,
William Powell, Myrna Loy.
Yeah,
I'm sort of a trivia expert on sort of that era.
Yeah.
And so Damon Runyon and Dashiell Hammett.
Of course,
well, my son's name is Dash.
Yeah, brilliant.
After Dashiell Hammett. Yeah. So I kind of continued my dad's thing. I'm Damon Runyon, my son's Dashiell Hammett, on and on.
I love it. That's such a beautiful thing. And the thing about the Thin Man movies, Nick and Nora Charles, those things, they really hold up today when you watch them.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
Tremendously enjoyable.
Yeah, we have a Turner Classic Movies here.
Yeah.
And they'll have a whole day of just Thin Man movies.
Yeah.
And I go ahead and record all of them, and they really hold up.
Yes.
And I'm afraid for them to go into those movies and say, well, let's redo those movies, and because you're never going to get that. All the characters were Damon Runyon characters. All of his friends were either from the racetrack, or they were strippers, or they were vaudeville, and that was all his connections. He was the sophisticated drunk guy. His wife was very rich, but when he got into an investigation, all of his connections were these Damon Runyon characters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful place in time, and I think because they were so prolific, you can go back. There's so many movies you can watch. I think you're right. I hope they never tweak them with them anyway.
I don't think they could make that movie. I can't think of too many people that would be able to play. Maybe Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
I think Johnny Depp might be able to play that boozy kind of character. Kind
Still
of like
sharp despite the booze.
Jack Sparrow only in the 30s.
Right on. Yeah, of course. So growing up in Arizona, we still live now, but you went to high school in Arizona, right? Because you're originally born in Detroit, weren't you? Is that right?
Detroit's still hometown to me. Yeah. I lived there until I was 10 years old, And when I was a kid, you have to remember now, when I was a kid, our block, every single block was a different nationality. There was an Italian block, there was an Irish block, there was a Polish block. We were French, Irish, Cherokee, but we lived on a Polish block. But everybody was so tight that on Saturday morning, all of the kids, we're talking about 10, 15 kids, they would drive us to the East Town movie theater, drop us off, because there would be Creature from the Black Lagoon, It Came from Outer Space, and The Brain That Wouldn't Die, all in black and white.
Yeah.
And we would sit there all day watching these movies. That was our Saturday. And then they would pick us up around 6 o'clock at night. But I mean, every Saturday was a 3-part, horror sci-fi thing. And I grew up on that. That was my babysitter, was those movies. I think early on in my life, I saw in these movies. I saw the comedy and the horror combined. And I think later on, when I've gotten a rock band, I said, why can't we combine all three of those? Horror, comedy, and theater and rock and roll, and make a character out of it. And I really do believe that Alice Cooper started back then, way back then.
I think that's fascinating. And I think you can really see that in that persona you created. So with when you look back on everything you've achieved and the theatricality you really introduced into rock and roll, that other people grabbed hold of as well. It became such a big thing, but you're there as the sun source of all that. When you look back on all those, those great albums from the early 70s, School's Out, $1 Billion Babies, which I mentioned before, and then, sort of Poison and Trash in the late 80s, and the whole, the incredible touring career you've had. When you look back on all of that, on everything you've done and the cross-media presence that you've got, what are the big highlights for you? What are the things you look at and, that you're personally the most proud of?
Well, the thing, the visual part of it's very, very easy. I mean, people love sensationalism, and that's what Alice Cooper gave them. We never did a show that people didn't walk out going, wow, well, I wasn't expecting that, or that was something I didn't, But the crux of all of it, the heart of all of it, how good are the songs? How good is the band? So we would spend 9 hours in a 10-hour rehearsal, 9 hours on the music, because we were up against Led Zeppelin. We were up against the Rolling Stones. We were up against the bands Zeppelin came up when we did, and Pink Floyd did. But when we look at who we looked up to, as far as the Stones and the Yardbirds and the Kinks and those bands, those were the bands that kind of created our music. And we just added a little West Side Story to that, and we added a little bit of James Bond to that, and we added a little bit of horror to that, and created this character. But, if you don't have the songs, you don't have the show. Other than that, you're a puppet show up there, and you won't last. People actually come to hear the songs. So the fact that we kept writing good songs that got played on the radio, that was the heart of it. Then you can bloom out and turn it into whatever you want to turn it into. Some of the great moments, you never expect to ever see a #1 album. This was a band that when our first album came out, from Frank Zappa produced it, it was reviewed as a tragic waste of plastic, which I still say is the greatest review I ever saw. And the guy that wrote it was a friend of ours. But he just said, this is just awful. That album now has become a piece of art for you. Now it's gone from being the worst thing to being, this is actually way ahead of its time. Yeah. Even Frank Zappa didn't get that album. He went, well, I don't get this. But those songs, the songs, that's what we spent all of our time with. Then once you had the songs, then you created the persona around it. Alice Cooper needed those songs in order to create the stage show. In other words, make the lyrics come to life. If you say, welcome to my nightmare, give them the nightmare. Spend the money, spend the time on the production, and actually give the audience the nightmare. If you say Cold Ethel and she's dead and she lives in a refrigerator, well, then you have to have that on stage.
Yeah, of course.
So when I look at and the things I'm most proud of, I think, is getting a #1 record that was recorded, by the way, at Morgan Studios, $1 Billion Babies, and School's Out in London. And then the fact that the longevity of the career, I mean, we're still touring, you know, and selling out the places. And now at 72, I've got the Hollywood Vampires.
Yeah, of course.
You know, with Depp and Joe Perry, and that band is as good as my band.
Yeah.
You know, so now I'm touring with 2 touring. the Vampires aren't as theatrical.
Yeah.
That band has something in it that kind of exudes that, because we all have little marks on our necks, you know, like here, but the band is killer, you know, and it's dark. And Christopher Lee, by the way, opens up the show.
Oh,
he reads
fantastic.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. Brilliant. And it's the very last thing that he did before he passed away.
Oh, how lovely. And was that something that, did you get Christopher to do that? Was that
Johnny had just done this movie? Well, Johnny and I just did a movie with him, Dark Shadows.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
We did that in London, and while we did it, we asked Christopher, you know, if he could just, because we wanted to end it with, listen to them, children of the night, what music they make. That was the opening of the show. Yeah. You know, but I mean, how do you when you open the show with Christopher Lee's voice?
Yeah, right.
Come on, that's too good to believe. And that actually was the very last thing that I think that he did professionally was that overdub for us. Yeah. You know, and he passed away after that. So, like I'm saying, the longevity of the career is still something that's amazing to me. But then I look at Jeff Beck, I look at Paul McCartney, I look at the Stones. Why are they still going? Because of the music, because the songs. Clapton, you know, all the guys, Jimmy Page, their quality. They've never ever gone down in quality. They've always been quality. I think that's the real important thing. Same thing with Forbidden Planet. If you're quality, everybody else just goes into second place. All the other stores go into second place because Forbidden Planet is the quality store.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, that's absolutely our philosophy. And it's great to hear you say it, because you're the exemplar of that, I think. I mean, you're the guy who's never given a bad show, you know. I mean, it's just you go to an Alice Cooper show, you go to a vampire show, you come out.
Why are you here 42 years later?
Yeah.
Why didn't you guys get buried with a bunch of the other stores? Because somebody there understands it, and somebody there knows how to keep it going to the point where people go there because they know it's going to be right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's a metaphor for life, isn't it? That's the way you've got to approach your life, and you've got to lead it.
You know, certain actors are there forever.
Yeah.
You know, Anthony Hopkins, people like that can go on forever because they don't do bad performances ever. Yeah. You know, and that's what keeps them going. People believe in that then, and they can't believe that, wow, here's another movie, and look, wow, he's so good in that movie. People like Benedict Cumberbatch is one of those guys. After Sherlock Holmes, and then he goes to Star Trek.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and he proves that he can do everything, does Hamlet, you know, and people now can't wait to see what he's going to do next. That's what you want from a star. You want something where you really believe in his talent, and you cannot wait to see what he does next.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if you got the chance to see this, but he did that great live version of Frankenstein that was directed by Danny Boyle about 10 years ago now.
I didn't see it. No, I did not see that. But I know that when I saw Doctor Strange, I thought,
amazing,
perfect for this.
Yeah,
you
absolutely. Know? Yeah. No, so amazing. So what was your entry point into, because you've done so much with comics and TV, what was your entry point into comic books?
Well, when I was, as soon as I could read, you know, I mean, I was in Detroit, and comic books were the deal. I mean, the Blackhawks were my favorite comic books.
Oh man, yeah, Reed Crandall, amazing stuff. Yeah.
I mean, the Blackhawks, they were, and nobody's ever done a motion picture on them. It's the Blackhawks were the best as far as I was concerned. You know, and I remember when Spider-Man started. You know, I mean, the fact that Spider-Man would break through a wall and break on through to the other side. Jim Morrison, you know, the doors. I went, a superhero that knows the doors? How cool is that? You know, because you had Superman and Batman, and they were all, you know, they were standards. And all of a sudden, here was this new guy that was plugged in to rock and roll. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? But I had literally boxes of comic books, everything from Archie to, you know, the Creeping Unknown, and, you know, these ridiculous ones. I wish I still had them. They'd be worth billions of dollars.
Thank you so much for making the time for me, Alice.
Not at all.
Thank you so much.
When this thing all blows over, and it will, we'll be back on tour, and we'll stop in. Please, London's, you know, one of our main stops. Please
come to London, and please come in and see us. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you
Maybe
so much.
The Vampires will do something there.
It would be great the Vampires can come to the store whenever they want. That would be whenever you guys want. That would be fantastic. Come and do a set in the store. That would be awesome.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Hey, so this has been Forbidden Planet 42. And this has been the man, the myth, the legend, Alice Cooper. Thanks so much for spending the last half hour with us. It's great to see you, mate.
Oh, great to see you. And I'll see you when we get on tour.
Right on. Fantastic. You take care. All the very best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.